The moment Blake Shelton stepped onto the voice stage alone, without contestants, without competition, without anything but his guitar and a song that had been buried in his heart for 20 years, everyone knew something extraordinary was about to happen. But nobody in that studio was prepared for what would become the most emotionally devastating performance in the show's history. What started as a simple acoustic song would end with America's toughest country star completely shattered on live television, proving that even the strongest men carry wounds that never fully heal. Subscribe now, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about Blake Shelton and show you the hidden pain behind his confident smile. It was supposed to be a special acoustic segment, something The Voice had never done before. The producers had asked Blake if he would perform solo during a break between battle rounds, maybe sing one of his hits or a classic country song to give the audience a different kind of experience. Blake had agreed, but with one condition. He wanted to perform a song he had written but never recorded, never performed publicly, never shared with anyone except his longtime guitarist. The song was called Daddy's Boots, and Blake had written it 3 years after his father Richard passed away from complications related to his battle with various health issues that had plagued him in his later years. Richard Shelton had been Blake's hero, his role model, the man who had taught him everything about country music, hard work, and being a good person in a tough world. Blake had never performed the song because every time he tried to get through it during private rehearsals, he would break down. The emotions were too raw, too powerful, too connected to the deepest grief he had ever experienced. But something about this moment, this stage, this opportunity felt right, like it was time to finally share this piece of his heart with the world. Standing alone on the voice stage now, with just a single spotlight illuminating him and his acoustic guitar, Blake felt the familiar weight of the song settling over him like a heavy blanket. He could feel his father's presence in the silence, could almost hear Richard's voice telling him to sing it like you mean it, son. The studio audience was completely quiet, sensing that they were about to witness something different from Blake's usual confident, playful performances. Kelly Clarkson, John Legend, and Niall Horan sat in their red chairs, turned toward the stage, understanding that this was Blake's moment, something personal and profound. Blake adjusted his guitar, took a deep breath, and began to play the opening chords of Daddy's Boots. The melody was simple but haunting, the kind of country ballad that gets into your soul and stays there. His voice started strong and controlled as he sang the opening verse. There's a pair of work boots by the kitchen door, haven't moved them since. You've been gone. The lyrics painted a picture of a son dealing with the aftermath of losing his father, of seeing reminders everywhere, but struggling to process the reality of permanent loss. Blake's voice carried the weight of real experience, of someone who had lived every word he was singing. As he moved into the second verse, something began to change in Blake's demeanor. His voice started to carry more emotion, more vulnerability than anyone had ever heard from him publicly. Your old coffee cup still holds its place. I can't bring myself to wash away the stains of our last morning. Blake's eyes began to fill with tears as the memories that had inspired these lyrics came flooding back. He could see his father's kitchen, could smell the coffee, could remember their last conversation before Richard's health had taken a turn for the worse, but it was the chorus that completely destroyed Blake's composure. I'm still trying to fill Daddy's boots, but they're too big for me to grow into. As Blake sang those words, his voice cracked completely. The tears that had been building spilled over, and for the first time in his professional career, Blake Shelton was crying openly while performing, but he didn't stop singing. Through his tears, through his broken voice, he continued, I miss your laugh, I miss your voice, I miss having you to turn to when I don't know what to choose. The studio audience was completely silent, except for the sound of people crying. Kelly Clarkson had her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face as she watched one of her closest friends in the industry completely vulnerable and raw. John Legend was wiping his eyes, clearly moved by the authenticity of Blake's pain. Niall was openly crying, understanding that he was witnessing something sacred. Blake tried to continue to the next verse, but his emotions overwhelmed him completely. His voice gave out entirely as he tried to sing the line about wishing he could call his father one more time. The guitar kept playing, but Blake's voice was gone, replaced by sobs that echoed through the silent studio. "I'm sorry," Blake whispered into the microphone, his voice barely audible through his tears. "Dad, I wish you could see me now. I wish you could know that I made it, that everything you taught me helped me become this." Blake set his guitar aside and walked to the edge of the stage, sitting down with his legs dangling over the side, completely overcome by grief that he had been carrying for years. The cameras continued rolling, but this was no longer a performance. This was a man processing the deepest loss of his life in front of millions of people. "He died before I really made it big," Blake said through his tears, speaking directly to the audience as if they were old friends. "Before The Voice, before the hit songs, before any of this, he believed in me when nobody else did, told me I had something special, but he never got to see it happen." Kelly Clarkson couldn't stay in her chair any longer. She walked over to where Blake was sitting and sat down beside him, not saying anything, just being present in his moment of pain. "The last time I saw him," Blake continued, his voice shaking, "he was in the hospital, and he made me promise him that I wouldn't give up on my music, that I'd keep singing country music the way it was supposed to be sung. He said, 'Son, you've got a gift, and you owe it to the world to share it.'" Blake wiped his eyes with his sleeve, looking out at the audience through his tears. "I've spent my whole career trying to make him proud, trying to live up to what he saw in me, but I never got to show him this." Blake gestured to the stage, to the studio, to everything around him. "I never got to bring him here and say, 'Look, Dad, we did it.'" John Legend had joined them now, sitting on Blake's other side, offering silent support as Blake continued to process emotions he had kept buried for years. "Every time I step on this stage, every time I coach these kids, every time I try to help someone believe in themselves, I think about him," Blake said. "I think about how he believed in me when I was just a kid from Oklahoma with a guitar and a dream that seemed impossible." Blake looked directly into the camera, speaking as if he were talking directly to his father. "Dad, if you can hear me, I want you to know that I never forgot what you taught me about music, about life, about treating people right. Every good thing I've ever done, you had a hand in it." The silence in the studio was profound, broken only by the sound of people crying as they witnessed one of country music's biggest stars having an intimate conversation with his deceased father on live television. "I miss him every single day," Blake said to the audience. "People think that success makes the pain go away, that achieving your dreams somehow fills the hole that losing someone leaves. But it doesn't. It just makes you wish they were here to share it with you." Blake stood up slowly, picking up his guitar again. "I want to try to finish this song," he said. "Not because I have to, but because I think he'd want me to. He always said that when something was hard, that was exactly when you had to push through it." With his voice still shaking but gaining strength, Blake began the final verse of Daddy's Boots. "So I'll keep walking in your footsteps, even though they're hard to follow. I'll keep singing all the songs you taught me through today and every tomorrow." This time, Blake made it through to the end, his voice growing stronger with each line, as he found a way to transform his grief into something beautiful, something his father would have been proud of. When he finished, the applause was unlike anything the voice had ever experienced. It wasn't the excited applause of entertainment. It was the reverent applause of people who had witnessed something sacred, something real, something that reminded them of their own relationships with people they had lost. Blake set down his guitar and addressed the audience one final time. "Thank you for letting me share that with you. I know it wasn't easy to watch, but my dad always said that the best songs come from the hardest places in your heart." The segment became one of the most watched and most shared moments in television history, not because it was polished or perfect, but because it was completely authentic. Blake had shown millions of people that grief doesn't have a timeline, that success doesn't erase loss, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is share your pain with others who understand. Blake later said that performing Daddy's Boots on The Voice changed his entire relationship with his father's memory. I realized that night that he wasn't gone. He was in every note I sang, every piece of advice I gave, every moment I chose to be kind instead of cruel. That song wasn't goodbye, it was hello. Because sometimes the strongest people are the ones brave enough to show their deepest wounds. Sometimes the most powerful performances happen when the performer stops performing and just starts being human. And sometimes a song about missing someone can become a bridge that connects us all to the people we've lost and the love that never dies.